And good evening, everybody. How you doing? Hello. Welcome to tonight's stream. And we're going to talk some trades tonight. And we have a very special guest coming back to the show, John Bitzer. How are we doing, my friend? How you doing? Long time no see. Oh, hold on, John. I goofed up. I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, wait 1 second. There we go. It's good now. It's good.
Hey, Robbie. Good to see you again. I think the last time we talked might have been around hot stove season. Bunch of deals happening then. So good to see you again.
You as well, my friend. You as well. And it's about that time. I remember last year, baseball trade values really took off. We had Jeff Passan put out the awesomeness of baseball trade values out there because we had the whole Juan Soto trade chatter. People were wondering, what is this guy's value? And you were kind of the only one out there that really had a good thumb on the pulse of what it would take to bring in, someone like a Juan Soto. Yeah. And all of a sudden, baseball trade values exploded. Looking back on that, just reflecting on that, how are you feeling about baseball trade values like since then? And, what are your reflections on the past year?
I think it's been really satisfying. It's been coming up on 4 years now, and we've never promoted it other than doing stuff like this with you and a few other things. And then people just kind of come to us and figured out that we were doing what we were doing, and it's a good thing. So the traffic's growing organically. We have a new version of the site launching in about 2 weeks, newly redesigned with a whole bunch of new features. So looking forward to that. So hopefully that puts us on another growth path.
Oh yeah, I'm very excited for that. Yeah, it's been, like you said, 4 years, and sometimes it never hurts to freshen things up and, give it maybe a bit of a new look. But at the end of the day, with baseball trade values, the values of the players is what matters. And when you say you're going to be kind of introducing new things, are you more talking about from a website point of view, or are you going to be making any changes to any like algorithms or anything? Like, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so one of the benefits is it's going to be more automated, and we've been testing the accuracy of it quite a bit. And so what that's going to do is allow us to update much more frequently. We used to do a lot of things by hand and like, okay, once a month, and it was a slog. Now it's just going to be like turnkey, boom, boom, boom. And then second thing is going to be a lot more new features to play around with. You can see what future trade value might be, what a guy's value might be a year from now or at the next deadline. You can start to get a view of what it's going to take to extend a guy, what it's going to take to sign him in free agency. There's going to be a whole bunch of cool features to play around with, rankings, all sorts of things.
That's awesome. I mean, like just you hearing that, it's making my nerd senses just tingle over here. I'm very excited about that. To be honest, I've loved the site. I mean, I've loved the site. I've used it in so many of my videos, and it's been a privilege to have a resource like that. And there will still be the haters out there. At the end of the day, I always have to mention that there's always the non-believers out there. But and like you say, it's never perfect. It's never going to be a perfect solution. Teams are going to have different philosophies, different ways of valuing players. And but I do think at the end of the day, it's the best tool out there to help kind of bridge the gap in terms of really what is the value of a player, or at least give you a better sense of how to value a player. So, kind of like, do you feel like people are, since, everything happened last year, with Jeff Passan tweeting it out, do you feel like people are more starting to kind of come around to how to value a player, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been gratified that a lot of folks in the industry have reached out to us, teams, agencies, things like that. So it feels good. Like a lot of people have told us they use this as a benchmark, and we've never pretended to be a replacement for teams because they have their own valuations. But what we try to do is sort of match what we think they're doing, and seems like, based on what I've heard, we're pretty close. There's going to be, to your point, there's going to be variations here and there. Some teams do things a little differently, and so we're not going to always be perfect. But I mean, long story short, 4 years, and we've gotten most of them, like 95% of them, right. So I feel like we're onto something here.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's always fun to play around with. It's funny where we're going to dive into things here in a second, but one more thing I want to add. It's funny when you introduce this site to people, because I'll still see, people, like I had someone the other day on Twitter saying like, oh, I think the Red Sox, they're going to trade, Kenley Jansen back to the Dodgers, and they're going to get Gavin Stone back, and yada, yada. He's naming like all these prospects. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to hit him with a little BTV right now. And I'm going to kind of, I'm going to
a reality check,
a whole new world. And then he tweets back like 2 days later, and he comes up, he sends me like all these different trade scenarios. I'm like, okay, so I really, really introduced this guy to something he had no idea about. And so like, it was cool, just to see that, he wasn't like, mad or anything. Like he was, it was like, he was like, oh, wow. Like, what's this? So I think that's the fun about it, is you can play around with it. So
yeah, it's at the end of the day, it's for fun. It's trying to pretend you're the GM of your favorite team, and what can you get for this guy? What would it take to get that guy? And we've never, like I said, I've never really spent any money on marketing or promotion or anything like that. It's just all word of mouth. It's talking to folks like you and others who seem to enjoy it. So the more word of mouth spreads, the better.
For sure. Well, we got a new trade season coming in, and I want to just kind of get your quick thoughts. Like, it feels like the last couple of years, and even the last few years, the trade deadline has been very active. Like, we've seen a lot of big names on the move. We've seen just nonstop trades at some points. Like, very exciting. Last year, it almost feels like it hit, I don't want to say a peak, but it doesn't feel the same this year to me. We saw a generational player like Juan Soto get traded last year. And I think it's going to be, no matter what season or what players are out there, it's going to be hard to top that. And I feel like we're probably in store for a less exciting trade deadline this year, trade season in general. Kind of, where are you at right now? Where are you feeling, or how are you feeling just about the trade market as of right now?
I'm with everybody else. It doesn't have a headliner like Soto, or not. Well, to be honest, nobody thought Soto was getting traded, or a few people did, because his value was so high, outrageously. It was like, wow, it's going to take 5 or 6 big prospects, and sure enough, that's what it took. So, but that was a real unicorn situation. The year before that, there's always kind of surprises. Like the Scherzer-Turner trade was a little bit of a surprise. It was a biggie, and it was right there. Was like in the around 80 or so in terms of our valuations. The big name this year is Ohtani, but it's anybody's guess what's going to happen there. It's very unclear what the Angels are doing, and but outside of Ohtani, just setting that aside, there's not really that big name that's getting everyone's excited. Like, okay, Lucas Giolito, what we know is that there are a lot of teams that need starting pitching, there's so many injuries and so many contenders that need rotation help. There's just not a lot of starting pitching out there of any good quality. And so that's why you see rumors like maybe Shane Bieber's available, maybe Corbin Burns is available, because they're reaching a little bit, But, looks like Giolito's going to get moved, but he's not the sexiest name out there, to be honest.
Yeah. So, it's going to be a really interesting market. I've done a video on Shane Bieber. I did that a couple weeks ago now. And, kind of just thought, any team could use starting pitching. But I think what people not all people, but some people tend to forget about is who exactly would be a good trade partner. Of course, like someone like a Shane Bieber would be great for the Yankees or great for the Red Sox or the Dodgers. I think what people need to remember is how are these teams' farm systems looking? What are they, what are the needs? So, you got to find that trade partner. Like, for example, like Shane Bieber, I didn't put the Yankees on that list because this was a team last year that traded for Frankie Montas. That didn't work out. Yeah. I almost have a hard time sort of sure, could they dive into the market, make a phone call? Yeah. But I almost wonder if they really want to put themselves in that position again to be giving up more prospects. It just doesn't seem like Chapman would pull the trigger on a deal like him. So at least in my opinion, I mean, maybe you think differently, but I think that's a big thing is just look, who's a good trade partner, like last year for Soto, like the Cardinals were in on it. We thought that they had the prospects to get it done, but it looked like the Padres in the end were the better fit trade wise because they had more volume instead of like top heavy. And so I think that's the interesting part. And that's where it kind of gets into different philosophies of different teams and so on. So, but we have quite a lot of players. Like you said, there's not really like a slam dunk headliner, but I feel like there's potential for it to be, like you said, I think surprising could be a good word. There's a lot of, in my opinion, above average kind of guys where maybe they could get traded. If you were to kind of give like a prediction on how this trade season is going to go, where do you think it's going to be more? Let's do it from a 0 to a 10. Let's say 0, no trades happen at all. 10, it's the busiest trade market of all time. Right now, kind of where are you thinking, like numbers wise, if you were to make a prediction right now?
6. It's not going to be like bonkers, and at the moment it doesn't look like there's going to be a big sexy headliner. I think there's going to be a bunch of small to medium-ish ones. One of the factors is there were a lot of extensions in the last offseason or so, and so a lot of guys that might have been on the market are off the market because they've been locked up. And some of the teams like the Braves have been locking up their players, and then other teams followed suit and said, oh, that's a good idea. And so they started locking up their players. And so the inventory of players that are good that would have been candidates it's just not there. So, there will be trades. The market is still forming. One of the things I found interesting is Thad Levine on MLB Network Radio the other day said, well, there's not that much. The sellers, we know who the sellers are, the obvious bad teams, but a lot of them have sort of been picked over, right? The A's have nothing to sell. I mean, the Rockies don't have much to sell. Like, where are you going to go? And so what he said is a lot of teams are talking to buyers for needs matching. So like, okay, I need an outfielder, you need a pitcher. Let's see what we got. That kind of thing may also be in play as opposed to the usual trade a veteran for a prospect kind of deal.
Yeah. No, absolutely. With me, kind of where I'm feeling right now, unless things change, it's also kind of weird to see teams like the Cardinals and the White Sox. I thought the White Sox could have been pretty good this year, but the Cardinals being the way they are this year, that's just like extremely surprising to me. Like, so all of a sudden they could be sellers, but then I think there's also like the Cardinals, the way you could look at them is this is a team that has guys locked up for the next few years. So it's not like they're going to be selling off pieces like Paul Goldschmidt and like Arenado. Like, I think you're going to see teams like that maybe more retool, trade off maybe a guy or two that's close to the end of his arbitration years or who has 1 year left on his deal and try and bring in, some pieces that could possibly help you for next year. I could see some teams maybe taking that approach, kind of like what Hyde Bloom did last year with the Red Sox. He didn't really trade a guy like a Xander Bogaerts or JD Martinez. He kind of wanted to, they weren't really out of the wild card race at that point. So he was trying to bring in pieces like the Christian Vasquez trade with the Astros, and Emmanuel Valdez has been helping them out this year. Where Vasquez wasn't very highly valued, but he brought in a guy that could have more upside. And you've been seeing him get a lot of playing time this year. I could see a lot of deals like that happen. Another example could be like the Braves trading for someone like Adam Duvall a couple years ago, like guys that are more in like that $2 to $5 million value range, where you could see a lot of players like that get moved, So
and those are fairly easy to do. And one of the factors there, sometimes there's a good player on a contract, and so the surplus isn't that the player's good, but he's making a bunch of money, and so you got to pick up that money, and so you're only going to give away a minor prospect or two to make up the difference, right? And so my point is, some teams are up against the luxury tax, like the Padres. Like, speculation is they may not have much money to inherit, right? So they may have to get creative if they want something, and it looks like they're going to need something. So what do? So, and their farm has largely been picked over, so they're in a kind of a tough spot. The Mets are kind of in a tough spot. They do have some prospect pieces to sell if they need to augment the big team, and they can pick up money because who cares? It's Steve Cohen's money. So so that's probably what they can pick up a big contract or two. They've got a little bit of flexibility, but my point is, you have to look at some of the money situations and what teams can take on salary and what teams can't.
For sure. And I think, we're everything we've kind of said here. I think it's shaping up to be an interesting trade market. I'm not quite sure if it's going to fully hit that, 10 out of 10 exciting trade market. I think it could. I think who knows what could happen over the next few weeks. It is still June 15th at this point. So what we're going to do here.
There's always a last minute Greinke trade or whatever. Like, I didn't see that coming.
Absolutely. And when you look at the standings right now, I mean, I've been mentioning this on my streams for, I feel like the past few weeks now. It's just there's a different feel to this season. Like you see a lot more teams, especially in the National League, a little more crammed together. There's not really teams are starting to separate a little bit, but teams are still kind of clustered together in that wild card race. The central divisions, one team gets hot that could change the whole, like the Cardinals. Like, I know we're talking about how they're disappointing, but win 10 straight games and all of a sudden they could be in first place. That's kind of that's why it's just weird. It feels like limbo is the right word for me. Like, they're kind of just hanging around, whereas the last couple of years, you knew some teams that were already out of it, like, they were going to get moved, so it was just a matter, not if, but when. Now it feels more like if. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of factors that can come into play. So what we're going to do here is we're going to kind of go team by team. And we're going to look at just some, a few different players on each team and, kind of just give our thoughts on everything. And then I have the values pulled up on baseballtradevalues.com. So we will dive into it. So I'm going to be using Tier Maker here. And we're kind of we got 3 tiers, definitely getting traded, might get traded, staying put. At least these are our thoughts right now. I mean, who knows? We could wake up, next week and all of a sudden we have a completely different opinion, but this is fun. I'll tell you right now, my viewers love Tier Maker. It's I don't know, they just love it. It's every time I do a Tier Maker video, it tends to do pretty well. So, hey,
cool.
But, let's start with the White Sox. This, like I said, I feel like people weren't really sure about the White Sox coming in. I'm always a half glass full kind of a guy. So I actually had them winning the division. Brutal pick as of right now, but I love the talent on the team. And, but now with the way the team is, I feel like they're trying to get out of this slump, and they're not just getting over that hump. So right now, these are the players that I have listed. Lucas Giolito would be the most obvious. I've listed out Dylan Cease's name has been coming up. Joe Kelly, that's a name that has come up as well because teams are always looking for bullpen help. Tim Anderson, that's one. I always see Tim Anderson to the Dodgers all the time.
Me too.
I swear it's like you might as well just trade him there because everyone just seems to want it to happen. One name that it's the guy's had a great story, coming back from cancer, Liam Hendricks, but every team needs bullpen help. And this is a guy, he's battle tested. This guy can go to any contending team, but there's also just there's also the other side of it too, where he has come back from this journey, and would that be the right thing to do? I'm not really sure how that, what comes into play there. And then there's another name that's even been floated around, like a Michael Kopech. This is a guy where, to me, in my opinion, former Red Sox legend, I see just a shutdown closer with him. Like, I've always seen that with him. Guy's got great stuff. It just seems like he never fully puts it together as a starter. Out of all these guys, and then I have Kendall Graveman here as well. Just simply, he's a controllable guy. He's a reliever. If they wanted to, look into that, why not? But out of all these guys, what are you thinking here with the White Sox?
So keep in mind what you just said is anything could change between now and the deadline. They could get hot and suddenly they're contending again because that AL Central is super weak. Nobody wants to win it. So they're not totally out of it. And keep also in mind that Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner, is 87 years old and probably doesn't want to rebuild again. It's what White Sox fans are saying, even though with the rational people saying, yeah, we should sell off these pieces. All right. So having said that, let's assume they're sellers, right? The most obvious piece to go, definitely getting traded, is Giolito, because everybody needs starting pitching. He's a quality starter, maybe not an ace, but he's a good 2-3-ish kind of guy. He's been pretty consistent, and he's on a rental. You only got him for 2 months plus whatever you do in the offseason. So there's no baggage, there's no big contract, just is what it is. So I think we have his value somewhere in the 14-15 range, somewhere in there. That's going to be like two prospects, two top 10 prospects. So that's a definite. A lot of people think Liam Hendricks is a good trade chip. I disagree. Our model disagrees, and look, it's a very rational thing, and wonderful story about him coming back from cancer. I mean, I love Liam Hendricks as a person. Seems like a great guy. There's not a lot of surplus value there. He's making decent money on his contract. He's also got an elbow injury right now. And the cancer thing is a little bit scary, even though, because what happens with all that chemotherapy and everything, I've never been through it, but what I understand is that it weakens your body quite a bit. I know he's had to kind of come back from it. But a lot of guys like Carlos Carrasco had leukemia, and he wasn't really the same after. There's stories like that, and all to their credit for being healthy, and you want to see them healthy first. But from a trade value perspective, Mancini was another case. They're just, sometimes these guys teams are afraid to pull the trigger and give up that much because there's health risk there. Add the arm injury in the contract, there's not a lot of surplus value there.
Yeah, that's I'm kind of with you there. Like, unless he, really shows that he's like, fully healthy, performing well, who knows? Maybe that could be like a surprise one. I feel like they end up hanging on to him personally, just because of the whole story and everything. And, but I agree with you. Probably Lucas Giolito is I would even say, like, I know you don't want to give up on starting pitching, but I would imagine that the White Sox, even if they're within like a few games, man, I don't know. That's like a tough call. Like, I'll ask you, if you're the White Sox, if you're the guy running the show, you're within a few games of that division crown. Are you trading Lucas Giolito?
If I'm within a few games, maybe not, because my owner is 87 and wants to win, and he signs my paycheck, and I might get fired if I don't go for it at this stage of his career.
That's interesting. Yeah, I would say for me, let's say the White Sox are out of it, Dylan Cease, this is a guy who could bring back a pretty decent haul. He's close to around 50 million. I would imagine this guy's value will probably get closer to like maybe 55. Who knows, maybe even 60. We've seen teams overpay for starting pitching, like Luis Castillo. I mean, he's not having like the same kind of year he was having last year, but Dylan Cease, this guy can rack up the strikeouts. Let's say the White Sox are out of it. Which way do you lean with him if he were, if the White Sox are out of it? Like, do you see him maybe staying put, or
maybe? again, because the owner's 87, I don't think they're going full rebuild, and he's got a couple of years of control after this, right? So
Right.
it's more of a retool situation, in which case, it's fine to let go of Giolito because he's a rental, but the guys with the control that are more of your core talented guys, I don't see them moving them in this scenario.
Yeah.
So I think they hold on to Cease.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like because that's another thing too. Like, do you really want to go through a rebuild at this point? But there's still a lot of talent on the team. So
you got Luis Robert, who's a great player and long-term contract. So you got a few pieces there, Eloy Jimenez and a few others that you can build around. So it's not like this little rebuild, right?
Yeah, and I think just people, every time a team is just struggling, you always love to just, we can trade this guy. But, it's kind of like the whole Pirates situation. Everyone was calling for a Brian Reynolds trade, and me and you, I feel like we're the only ones on the planet, besides maybe Pirates fans, that were saying, like, why would they trade this guy? Like, this is a guy who's just about to enter his prime. They're about to enter that competitive window.
Right.
And look where they are. They signed him to the extension like we thought, and they're right there in the Central now. Like, to me, it was that's kind of where I see the White Sox slightly different. Not really the prospects helping you out, but just they still have this talent that can help, and especially in the Central. The Central is such a weak division every single year.
Right.
The White Sox could all of a sudden win 95 games next year with most of the same guys.
And even looking long term, it's not like Detroit and Kansas City are going to be great next year because they've struggled with their farms, and so they've got a ways to go. You know what I mean? So it's open season basically. Anybody can take that.
Yeah, I'm interested about. Before I actually get to that, if the White Sox are sellers, I do think Joe Kelly is going to get moved. To me, that he's a guy that I love Joe Kelly. I will always love Joe Kelly. I hope the Red Sox can get back into it and they trade for the guy.
And he's having a great year, and his underlying stats look fantastic. So he's on his game. He's got a lot of postseason experience. It seems like every time I turn on the TV in postseason, Joe Kelly was pitching for somebody. So
he's always just right there somehow. Graveman, right. I'm on the fence with Graveman because he has that extra year of control. Yeah. But he's the reliever, or he's a reliever that can, really help you. And he's having a decent year. So,
he's not like a top tier reliever. He's like a seventh inning ish guy, so he's not going to bring back a ton, and he's making some money. So I guess if they get, something they like, sure.
I'll probably go with him. Might get traded. It's kind of I would say maybe if the right deal comes along and maybe bring in a decent prospect, maybe close to a major league ready player, I could say maybe. Yasmani Grandal is an interesting one because I believe he is in the last year of his deal. Yeah. So now a team out there's been rumors that the Marlins are looking for catching help. I love what the Marlins are doing this year. I would love a veteran guy like that to go to a team like that. They have Stallings, they do have that, but I guess they are looking at the catching market. Grandal is not really he's having a better year than he was having last year. Still not amazing by any means, but the throwing arm hasn't been quite as strong. His pop time ranks pretty low among all catchers. What do you think about Grandal? And that's another thing too. He's making quite a bit of money. So I wonder if the Marlins would want to even pursue someone like him. I'm on the fence with Grandal, honestly.
I think he's this year's Christian Vasquez. Somebody's going to want him just because the catching market is like everybody needs just so few catchers that are any good at hitting. Yes, he's past his prime. Grandal has seen better days. His, catchers, they have a shorter shelf life, right? Because their knees go and all that crouching and all that stuff. So yes, you can see the wear and tear on him. But he's a rental, and he's probably the least bad option, if you will, in the trade market. There's no great options, and a bunch of teams that need catchers, the Angels, maybe the Padres. I know, Gary Sanchez is hitting some home runs, but Gary Sanchez, he's going to cool off. So there's a bunch of teams that need catchers, right? So somebody's going to pick up Grandal and maybe overpay for him a little bit, or at least pay his salary.
I agree with you. I'm kind of I'm more in like the right in between, definitely getting traded and might get traded, but I'm more like here I would say, but I'll probably lean more towards like him going somewhere.
But he's a
because,
rental.
like you
Why
said,
would you hold on to him if you're the White Sox? Why not?
yeah, and if they get the right deal, if
Yeah.
we look at his trade values, right, it is negative.
Yeah,
so
he's on that contract and he's fading.
Right. So, I mean, it's not like it's really going to cost you a whole lot really to get him as long as you just
Right.
take on that salary.
Right.
So, Kopech is, I don't know what to think. I know we just talked about Kopech earlier. I'm not like sure what to think with Kopech. I'm very, because the thing is, I believe it was Mark Feinstein that wrote an article about Kopech saying that, he did mention the fact that he is under control, but with Kopech, he has like an up and down track record, on the field, off the field as well. He's not having a great year. So as of right now, you guys have him at a median value of 12.5. If we're to actually go to his surplus, you're looking at maybe even upwards to 15. Maybe, if a team really wants him, maybe you can go a little more, but Kopech is interesting. Where are you on him?
I think he's a maybe, but I lean keep because he's got more control, and that stuff is tantalizing. You made the point earlier, like, wouldn't he be a great closer? And, I think they've been trying to convert him to a starter because it'll have more value to the team and in trade value as well. But it's just not taken. At some point, you got to say, you know what, just close. But they don't seem to be quite there yet, but I don't think they've totally given up on him either. So I think they have him stick around a little bit more, see if they can make something useful out of him.
Yeah, I think with him, because in my opinion, yes, he's under control and there is some value there, but I feel like it's not worth it. Like really trading. I feel like you can get more value out of him than what you would get in return, taking a risk on maybe a couple of prospects. I feel like it would be worth it more to hang on to him as of right now. So, and then maybe just try again for next year and see how it goes. The last guy is Tim Anderson. The one thing with Tim Anderson is he has a club option for next year. And so I guess I guess you can go either way on that, like where that could either be good for his value or maybe that he can maybe even bump it up because a team could exercise him. But the problem is he's not having a great year. He's got the name, right? But he's having an underwhelming year. Like, are you more of like a maybe on him or probably more of a staying put?
I just don't see teams all that interested in him. I know the Dodgers would remember it to him, but like he's making $12.5 million this year, and if you pick up the option, that's another $14 million next year. He's right around. He's got some surplus value for the remainder of this year, but if you increase his salary to 14, plus factor in the fact that it'll be 31, and he's having kind of a down year, like, do you really want to spend another 14 million on him next year? I don't know. So maybe he's just a rental because that's kind of a wash. So you're not going to give up that much from him. Yeah, sure. Maybe a team like the Dodgers could use another shortstop. Sure. But, one thing it's been clearly obvious, like, if a guy is not performing all that well, the interest tends to be kind of tepid because you don't have a lot of room to play around. You've only got 2 months left in the season. You want to buy the hot hand. You don't want to buy, maybe I can turn him around. Maybe he's a project. Sometimes there's exceptions to that, but most of the time they want to just buy the hot hand. And he's not a hot hand right now.
Yeah, like it makes me, I don't know why, it just makes me think of, the Xander Bogaerts possibilities from last year. Bogaerts was having a decent year last year, but Anderson isn't. So it almost seems like a poor man Xander Bogaerts situation from last year where, he has the name, but he's not the best defensive shortstop out there. He could play second for some teams, but I feel like there's not really just going to be a very big market for him anyway. Sure, that bat could help, or if the bat was there, that would garner more interest. But that's the problem, is the bat's not really there, and he's not really an amazing defender out there. He'll get the job done, but I just don't see a whole lot with Anderson. For me, I would say he probably just stays put. Are you there too?
I think I am. Now, the one exception I could be, remember a couple of years ago when the Braves just traded for all those sort of veteran outfielders and they paid And because they were banking on, like, yeah, maybe one of these guys will pop. So let's get Eddie Rosario and let's get Duvall and whoever, Soler. And they did, regress positively when they got to the Braves. And so there's a little bit of a chance that some team might say, you know what, maybe if he joins him, the changes sooner, it might help. Maybe he'll pop up a little bit. So there's that possibility. So I'm more of a maybe than you are because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say like where I was with Grandal, like in between might get traded and definitely getting traded. I'm like in between here. There is a possibility, I would say. Who knows? Maybe he gets hot like over the next few weeks, and maybe the teams are like, okay, that bat's looking pretty good. And to me, if I was a GM and a guy had a club option, I'd be like, oh, hey, whatever. I think that's whatever. Hey, it's good for us if we want to exercise it for next year. So, I'll put him in the middle, and because I do think it's more. If I were to go more of a chance of Mike getting traded and staying put, I'd probably lean towards Mike getting traded. So yeah, I think it's a good maybe. So
all right,
but let's stay in the Central, and we got a couple of guys here. For me personally, I think these guys are moving. Just Aroldis Chapman. I think that was when that signing happened this offseason. It was it was so weird, and I'm like, okay, but then it took me 5 seconds to realize, like, oh, well, that's kind of smart because they're just going to trade him. So they're banking on him getting better. So it was a project, and it has really paid off. Chapman is having a very good year. His velocity's back up. I don't know what it is that these guys, the Yankees, they can fix guys like Matt Carpenter, but when these other guys, when they leave, Aaron Hicks and Gary Sanchez, even a little bit, and Chapman, they leave and they just do better in other places. But so, I think we're both on the same page with Chapman getting traded.
Oh, there's no question. Yeah. I mean, the Royals are out of it. He's a rental and they'll get a decent return, and he's hot. So, I mean, look, that was super smart of JJ Piccolo, the Royals GM. He only paid $3 million for him. He's banking on a bounce back. He got the bounce back, and now he's sitting pretty. Now everybody's calling him. So, everybody was turned off from how he finished his career with the Yankees because he missed a workout and tattoos, blah, blah, blah. It seemed like a head case. But, he's back on his game now, and you only need him for 2 months-ish. So he's throwing 103. So there you go. Everybody wants that.
I mean, it's pretty cool to see. And I also think, too, he's kind of been with Scott Barlow. So I think it's like not all the attention is on him. He can kind of just almost in a way, like kind of lay low a little bit. Even more so in Kansas City. And but Scott Barlow, this is a guy that has been having a really good year as well. Chapman is like very good. And Barlow's having a good year as well. I'm right there with Barlow as well. I thought Barlow was going to get traded in the last couple of years, and they've hung on to him. And here we are. He's still with the Royals. I would think they got to trade him now.
He's only got 1 year of control after this. He's going to get more expensive. The Royals are probably not going to be contenders next year, so you might as well get what you can for him. He's worth about $11 million in surplus right now. That's going to get you a decent prospect or two. Package him with Chapman if you want. You can get like a really good prospect. That's like $19-ish million in value. That's a 50-level prospect right there. So that's why you're seeing rumors like, oh, maybe we'll package them together because you can get quality for that.
Yeah, and especially, relievers are always a commodity at the deadline, and I actually didn't realize Barlow's value was even coming out this much. And I could definitely see, especially with relievers at the deadline, I could always see, more of like the higher end of the surplus value, getting closer to that. Like, we saw that with Efros, last year where the Yankees, they gave up, I think it was Wesneski.
Yep, it was.
Yeah, and, decent prospect. And I could definitely see that. I think the Royals are in a great spot right now. And just the thing with bullpen guys, too, is that I don't want to say bullpen guys are a dime a dozen, but, you never know who could emerge and then just automatically use your closer. And so I think the Royals are in a great spot. I would be, again, right there
totally
with you, Barlow getting traded, Chapman getting traded. But, there definitely will be some teams. Let's see if one team I thought that would be a good fit for Chapman if they can get themselves back into it. I mean, my goodness, I don't know what's going on with them. The Mets, he's already been in New York. Could he go to the other side of New York? Maybe be that guy for them in the second half.
They could use a closer.
Yeah, but we're not going to dive really into teams, especially with relievers, because
Yeah.
Any team, any playoff contender could use another bullpen guy. The Rangers, I think, could be a team. I think Chapman would be a great pickup for the Rangers.
Yeah.
Because that team has gone off to a great start. Feels like they could use a bullpen guy. Even like a Barlow could be good. Hey, 2 Barlows in that bullpen, pretty fun.
Yeah, they don't really have an established closer, and they've got a lot of other pieces that are clicking. So that's a perfect area to target.
Yeah. Well, staying in the Central, we have an interesting guy, and that's Alex Lang. Unfortunately, the Tigers, they lost Riley Green, and ever since that happened, the Tigers have just completely fallen off the face of the planet. But one guy that has had himself a really good year and is under a lot of control at 27 years old is Alex Lang. And he has just really emerged this year. He's had a couple of rough spots lately, but still the numbers overall look great. Stuff looks great. When it comes to, I'm interested to hear your thoughts about this one, because when it comes to these relievers that are under a lot of control, how do you feel about these guys personally? Like when it comes to just their values?
Yeah, they can get, that those years of control will add up, and what we found is that the guys who are in their 20s are better bets. There's a lot of relievers who are sort of late bloomers, guys who are 30, 31, 32, and you only have a couple of years of window, and they tend to decline at that age. But these guys who are like right in their prime, like 27, I would say the teams tend to stick to them because their value doesn't decline. If anything, it goes up a little bit, as you're seeing with guys like Alexis. Diaz is a good example. There's a few others, and Lang is a perfect example. I kind of feel like the Tigers should hold on to him because he's not a declining asset. He's right there in his peak, and he's probably going to get even more so if they hold on to him for another year or so. And who knows what will happen in a year or two. So I don't see him getting traded because he's got all that control.
Yeah, I agree, because it's like, in my opinion, if I'm a GM and I have a guy that's having a really good year, then I'm thinking like, well, he's not a free agent for another 5 years. So It's like, what is he? Because I think people tend to just forget that when you have these guys under control, I mean, every year your goal is to win a World Series and get to the playoffs. Have a good year.
Yeah.
So why give up good players that are under control? Yeah, if they're closer to free agency, that's a different story, obviously. But these guys that are under a lot of control, why get rid of them?
Just like Bednar last year, but he was saying,
exactly.
The Pirates trade Bednar, but they didn't, and now look, they're benefiting from the fact that they're starting to contend.
Having, I talked about how bullpen guys can be like a dime a dozen, but a really good closer is not. It's a harder to come by. When you find it, it's like you don't want to give it up. Like it's tempting. At least if I was a GM, it'd be tempting, but I just would rather hang on to him, because especially, a team like the Tigers, it's not like they're like a bottom feeder team, that has like no payroll. Like this is a team that could go out there and spend some money.
It's true.
They've spent some money in the last couple of years, and that has not really panned out. One guy it's just dawning on me now. One guy that I forgot to put on this list was Eduardo Rodriguez.
Yeah.
About a month ago, I'm thinking, why trade Eduardo Rodriguez? I know you guys. I think you guys did an article where you listed out some potential targets.
Yeah.
And me with Erod, I don't know. Maybe it's the Red Sox bias. I understand that can come into play, but I'm thinking here he's having a good year. I understand there was the option or the opt out, but my opinion was, if this is a team that's trying to win or get to the playoffs, in the next couple of years, I would be more motivated to rework that deal. Kind of like what with the Padres and Manny Machado this year, rework something to where he stays and he's having success. That's where I was with Eduardo Rodriguez. But, I think he is. I think he got hurt recently, but I think he's
the pulley finger thing.
Yeah, but he looks like he's going to be coming back soon.
Yeah.
Now, and that was also another thing. The Tigers, they were in a better position a few weeks ago, and now they've just completely I don't know what's been going on. I don't know. They just lost everything since Riley Green got hurt. And obviously Erod out too. But where are you now? Let's say he's good to go. He's healthy and he's pitching well. Where are you there?
I'm skeptical on Erod for a couple of reasons. I think he's got a lot of baggage. First of all, he missed a lot of last year with personal issues and an injury, I believe, in there, all sort of wrapped up. Finally came back this year. He was lights out for a while, but then he got injured. So there's a risk there if you trade for him that he doesn't opt out and you're stuck with baggage for a few more years. And I think that's in the back of a lot of GMs' minds because he's a little bit unpredictable. Like, is he going to stay healthy? Is he going to go AWOL again? And that's a little scary. On the other hand, he could just be a rental and opt out if he is pitching well. But the window of him sort of demonstrating that he's healthy and pitching well again is closing. You've only got like a month or whenever he comes back. It's a little bit like when Montas was injured last year and he only had like 2 or 3 starts and then, okay, fine. They rushed into trading him and that didn't work out for the Yankees. So it's a little bit reminiscent of that. So you want to see if he's healthy. You want to see he's back into form. And then, yes, maybe, but there's a whole bunch of questions with him.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with me. I a few weeks ago, I'm thinking like you mentioned, there was the MIA last year, and it just seems like something's just been going on for the last couple of years. And to me, it's like when this guy that you sign this guy to the long-term deal, there's the opt-out, but I would be more inclined to try and keep this guy around, try and get his best years and take advantage of his best years. This is why you brought the guy in, so it would just be weird to me if they just traded him. But then I think the opt-out as well, that's going to make it harder to trade him just because I think that's going to hurt his value. So,
exactly. You have to kind of price him as a rental because you can't guarantee he's going to stick around.
Yeah. And you don't know what he's going to do because obviously last year, he disappeared and it's like, you don't even know what the heck he's going to do with the opt-out. So,
right. So from a value standpoint, you're only paying for the last 2 months of this year, and you're only doing so if you can demonstrate that he's healthy and back.
Sure. So, real quick, we'll just get through a couple more teams in the Central. Then we're going to take a quick little break to talk about tonight's sponsor. But let's get through the Cardinals. Like we said, it's man. I mean, if we're looking at the current standings, we have the St. Louis Cardinals. I can't believe I'm even looking at this. Like, this is crazy to me. 27-42. Like, that's nuts. Like, because this is a team where I saw, not the greatest rotation in the world, but a rotation that can get the job done. You got a good couple of pieces in the back end, great looking offense, good prospect in a Jordan Walker. I'm stunned at what I'm seeing here with the Cardinals. Like, this blows my mind. Anything can change. They are in that weaker division. I do feel like, I do think a part of this is they're not playing that Central division as much. All these teams now are a little more spread out. And I think that's why you are seeing more compression in the standings where teams are a little more closer together. I don't know if that's coming into play, but like, it's just I'm trying to figure out what's going on like with this Cardinals team. The pitching hasn't been very effective. They haven't been having a lot of things fall their way. We're going to assume that they're probably going to be sellers, especially now. Like they're 9 out. Like that's a pretty tough hill to climb. I guess you could say with the White Sox, there could be a lot of guys that are potential candidates, but I just put a couple here because I think there's more obvious reasons with these guys. Someone like Tyler O'Neill, he's had just a couple of weird moments where he got benched. He is coming back from a back thing, but he's saying that he's feeling good. And he just had, I don't know, something, it seems like a change of scenery could be good for him. And then there's someone like Jack Flaherty where he's going to be a free agent after this year. So overall, what are your thoughts on the Cardinals and kind of what are you feeling here?
So I think the chickens come home to roost with the pitching. Like they've been, riding that Adam Wainwright train for a while. Now he's 41 and he's done. He's not an ace anymore. I'm sorry, but he's done. He's had his good years, right? He's had his hero moments. Miles Mikolas is just okay. Flaherty, at least he's coming back a little bit, but his underlying stats been bad. He's been injured a lot. He's been a mess up until recently. So
a couple of good starts
still got lately. Some question marks. Yeah. And then, Jordan Montgomery, at least, soft tosser, control guy, at least he gets the job done. Nothing too exciting. So there's not really an ace there. There's not really like a solid 1-2 punch there. They're going to try out Matthew Liberatore, whose stock has kind of finally gone back up a little bit because he was pitching well in the minors. So it's a spotty rotation, and that's not a rotation that's going to win a World Series from the looks of it. That's the main problem. I think the offense has been fine. I don't
Oh,
think
the
that's
offense is
been an
good. Yeah.
issue. Yeah.
Good offense. They
So,
rank well.
yeah. And then, of course, they just lost Ryan Helsley to an injury, and, I read an article like pretty much if you throw 100 plus, you're going to get injured. It's just not good for your arm. And so you're going to get, accolades, but then you're also going to get injured. So inevitably. So that's what's happening there. Hicks also threw 100 and he's been injured a lot. So, there's a couple of reasons looking at it from a trade point of view. They've got some chips if they want to. They got a couple of rentals. Chris Stratton, his middle reliever, is a rental. He's probably going to go. Giovanni Gallegos is their best reliever. There would be demand for him. He's been consistently good. And there's a lot of offense to pick from. The farm is decent. So if they wanted to be buyers, they could. That's the whole thing. If they decided they wanted to try it because the Central is so weak, they could still try to make a move and trade some guys from their farm, because they don't really need to add more to their farm. The farm's already pretty good. But if they sell, there's a couple of pieces they could sell, so which we can get into.
Yeah, like I wonder if we talked about how maybe there could be some surprises. I wonder. I remember you mentioned this last year. I can't remember what situation you mentioned this in, but could a team deal from a position of strength where could you maybe look at a couple of these pieces in their lineup, like someone? It might sound kind of crazy to Cardinals fans, but like someone like a Brendan Donovan, where he could, maybe bring back, maybe a decent pitcher, or maybe like a couple of good pieces that could maybe help you out for next year.
Yeah. Or Nolan Gorman, who's having a really hot year. And he's kind of playing out of position at second base. Like he's not really a second baseman, So I don't know. You could probably fill that slot pretty easily on the offensive side, and while getting some young pitching back if you traded him, because he's a hot bat. But they've got some good pitchers on the farm. Tink Hens, Gordon Graceffo. They've got a couple of guys there. McGreevy. There's some things bubbling up so it's coming. It's just not there yet.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I agree with you that they're, even someone like a Dylan Carlson could really bring you back something. He's got that young. He's 24 years old. It's crazy, man, because we've been talking about Dylan Carlson now for what feels like 20 years, and he's still only 24 years old. Like, could you maybe move on from him? Like, something like that. I mean, this might sound a little crazy. We'll talk about. I don't know if I want to jump the gun. Maybe even like, could the Cardinals make like a crazy move, even bringing in someone like a Shane Bieber who can help you out for next year? Maybe the Guardians would like to have a young outfielder, Dylan Carlson. I'm kind of just speculating. It's probably not going to happen, but I think the Cardinals, they could make some interesting moves, and I think who knows, but they have the potential because they have some guys that really could bring in some pieces for you.
Totally. They're interesting because they could go any number of ways, right? They could buy, they could sell from strength to augment, a weakness. They could do a lot of different things. It's going to be a very interesting team to watch.
Yeah. And they're just like in this weird position where they got so much talent and they got value, but they're just so out of it. And it's like, might as well just start looking toward, it's going to get to a point where obviously this team is going to be, even this year's a dud. They're going to come up in, teams that could be pretty good for next year. So, and obviously they still got lots of good players under control, good prospects, like you mentioned. So sure, the Cardinals are having a dud year, but they could be pretty strong next year. With these two guys, Tyler O'Neill, Jack Flaherty, where are you leaning with these two?
Well, assuming they're sellers, Flaherty's definitely going because he's a rental and he's having a decent year. So
I agree.
Such a messy last couple of years before that. That's why his value may look low at first glance. It's because we're taking into account the track record. Like he's been very fragile and very injury prone, and his
right around 3.3 million median. So
yeah, exactly. So it's likely going to go up if he continues to pitch well, but he's got to get those underlying metrics down because he's basically it's kind of a smoke and mirrors act right now. But somebody's going to see those service stats and say, yeah, sure, we'll pay something for that. Yeah. So I'm leaning overpay and trade there. I think that if they're sellers, they got to get something for him because he's a rental. So with O'Neill, yeah, because he seems like he's on the outs, and they've got a surplus of outfielders.
Yes.
He's had a really up and down career though, so he kind of, and he's got a back injury now, so that's why his value is really cratered. On the plus side, he's got speed and power, and that's tantalizing, and he actually can play a decent center field. He looks like a corner guy, but he's really kind of versatile, so that's appealing. On the other hand, the back issues, you sort of question the attitude sometimes.
Sure.
So those things are going to counterbalance each other, which means he's not going to get a lot in return.
Yeah, for me, I would go might, because if we're looking at the numbers here, 29 games, he wasn't really doing much, but he has that potential where maybe a different team, and he really gets it going. Maybe a new voice in his ear, just a fresh start. He is a good player when he's right, and he has that control. So, you said, there is a surplus of outfielders, and he could, and he's a guy that still has decent value, like right around $7 million for the median. That could bring you in a couple of decent prospects, like mid-level prospects. So, or maybe even something to help you for next year.
And most teams can afford that. They've got the middle of their prospect list. They can just grab a couple from there. That's fine, and take a shot at them.
Yeah, I'll still say might, though, just considering that the health and the down year. So it's gonna be interesting. And then one more guy in the Central that I want to talk about before we start getting to a couple of American League teams is Alexis Diaz. Me personally, man, I think it's like that, what we talked about, like the Pirates. This is a team that is I'm actually doing a video on the Reds as we speak. I'm in the editing process of it. And this Reds team, they're fun. They're looking good. We saw people with trash bags on their heads a couple of years ago sell the team, and all of a sudden this team is looking really fun and has a lot of potential. I'm not seeing why you would trade this guy. I think a lot of Mets fans would love to have him because the Edwin Diaz connection, obviously. But I think he's staying put. What do you think?
Yeah, he's definitely staying put because they've got new life, to your point, and they've got great prospects coming. They've already got a couple of them already in the majors, and a bright future. So he's going to be their closer over the next couple of years, and as they get more and more competitive. So they're probably not going to make the playoffs this year, but there's an energy there and there's an optimism. So you don't want to, and plus the farm is already one of the strongest in baseball. Even if you did trade him, you'd just be adding more to something that is already strong. So that doesn't make as much sense,
This is David Bednar again. This is same exact situation, lots of value, a team that's very close. I would say people were maybe a little more optimistic about the Pirates last year than they were about the Reds coming into this year, but you've had a lot of guys step up for them this year. Matt McClain, Spencer Steer have emerged. The Hunter Green is looking really, even everyone knew he was going to be good, but he's really taking a step forward this year. So much talent on that team. I'm really excited to see what the Reds do for next year, but I agree. I think Diaz is staying put, but really quick, we have to go over tonight's sponsor. And John, I actually, hey, while you're with me, I don't know if you've ever heard of this game. Are you into fantasy baseball at all, John?
I used to be. I've gotten so busy with this website that I haven't been this year, but I have been in the past.
So I've been playing a lot of Sorare MLB. They originally started with soccer or football over in England, and it really has grown. They've expanded into the NBA as well as Major League Baseball. It's a different form of fantasy baseball where you collect cards, and they're digital cards, obviously. And brings me back to my days of playing with Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I was that kind of a kid, and it gives me that same feeling. And I've been having a blast with it. And you can be in tournaments. There's all these different prizes that you can win. And there's different types of cards that you can collect. For instance, like these gold cards here. These are harder to come by, but when you have enough that can put together a team, you can enter better tournaments and get better potential for prizes, cash prizes, card prizes. Who knows? Maybe they'll even fly you out to a fun event at some point. But this year so far, my team, and you can set your lineup however you want. There's 2 tournaments per week, and you can set your lineup as whatever you want based off of what cards you have, obviously, per week, just like fantasy baseball. So this week, I got Zach Wheeler. He had a pretty good start. Sawinski has been going off. He's been getting hot lately. Nate Lowe, Merrifield, they've been very solid this year. And I was still waiting on a Garrett Whitlock start from him. Alvarado, still waiting on him. But as of right now, I'm ranking, pretty decently, 8,176 out of just under 27,000 people. But yeah, we're having a great time here with Sorare MLB. If you want to get started with it, click the link down below in the description. And actually, John, every week when you based off of where you place in a tournament, you get a reward. I mean, you're going to get a reward pretty much every single time you enter a tournament, but it's the level of the award or the reward that is what counts. So I didn't do very good last week, so this is probably not going to be good, but this is the card that I get. We got the Braves, an outfielder. Oh, I wish it was Ronald Acuna Jr., but it is Sam Hilliard. And man, if I got Ronald Acuna Jr., that'd be crazy. But yeah, it's a great way to play fantasy baseball. I really think it's on the uppity up. It's a new way to play fantasy baseball. I've been having a blast with it. It's just different, and it's like challenging because when I get these rewards, it motivates me to try and get even better rewards too. So yeah, John, go try it out. And everyone else that is with me right now, in the description, click the link. You can go draft your team and go get started on your own. And make sure to, if you when you get signed up, make sure that you join the tournaments that are this week's tournaments end tomorrow, and then the weekend starts on Friday. So you got 2 tournaments per week, Monday through Thursday, and then Friday through Sunday. So, alrighty, enough of that. Everyone is sick and tired of me talking about that. Let's get back to the trades. So actually, funny enough, we just pulled a Sam Hilliard, and a former Braves outfielder is on my Red Sox, and that is Adam Duvall. The Red Sox are in a weird spot, John, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. And I'm always half glass full. I'm always fighting with the Red Sox fans on Twitter, the negative Nancy's, but they got the upper hand right now on Twitter. And and I'm not looking very smart. I picked the Red Sox to get the 3rd wild card this year. Thought maybe they had that energy coming in, but I don't know. It's looking like they're once again going to be around a 500 team. They haven't been playing well lately. How do you take 2 out of 3 against the Yankees and you drop the first 2 to the Rockies? I don't get that. But we got a couple of trade candidates here, or a few actually, at least to me, are slam dunk candidates. We got Adam Duvall. We got James Paxton, who's, man, what a great story that is, coming back this year, and he's pitching well. And then a fan favorite in Kike Hernandez, and actually he has just now been moved back to a utility role. He's been the shortstop for the Red Sox. He hasn't been playing well defensively. The bat's been kind of weird. I think the shortstop thing has kind of gotten to him a little bit because he is way more comfortable playing out in center field. It's so obvious just watching him. And I feel like a lot of the times when these guys play positions that they're not comfortable with, it seems to affect them with the bat. I don't know if that's even a connection. I don't know if anyone can do a study on that or whatever, but I don't know. But the Red Sox are in a weird spot, and I'm pretty sad. I need to know. Tell me what you think the Red Sox are going to be doing. I have to know. My anxiety is through the roof. What are you thinking?
Oh, they, according to Fangraphs, they have a 9% chance of making the playoffs. The problem is there's all those other teams ahead of them in the AL East, and so they're not winning the AL East. The Rays are off to the races. So, their only shot is to get one of those wild card spots. I mean, it's not totally out of the question. And there's a number of teams that are like, Mariners, Angels,
Yeah.
I mean, like Blue Jays, it's that 3rd wild card spot is a little bit more open, but I just don't feel like it's their year. When you look at all those guys that are, the pitching's been spotty, the offense been spotty, it doesn't seem like a playoff team to me. So I think they're going to be sellers.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that same boat as last year. I feel like they're going to do a very similar approach with last year. They got a couple of pieces, like you had Vasquez last year, who was the key piece they ended up moving. I feel like it's going to be similar this year, where there's not really like an overwhelmingly obvious person that has a lot of value to sell off, like a guy like a Lucas Giolito kind of a type that has a decent amount of value that can bring you in a couple of good guys. They don't really have like that slam dunk sort of a guy, like a best of both worlds situation where he's an obvious trade candidate and someone that can bring you back decent value. They have a few guys here. When we take a look here, Duvall, I mean, 0.2 median as of right now. Kike is in the negatives as of right now. Paxton is, if he stays healthy, that to me is the most obvious guy because teams need pitching, especially in a thin market. People are going to be scratching and clawing for starting pitching wherever they go. Who do you think is the guy would you agree Paxton is the obvious guy, even with the health issues in the past, or are you leaning towards someone else?
Because he's a rental and he's cheap, then yeah, someone to take a shot at him. I mean, I can't believe he's only making $4 million. That was kind of a steal.
Yeah.
And it's turned out to be, he's kind of their default ace, even though ace isn't really what he is because he's made of glass and all that. But, he's always had talent. So, when he's pitching decently. The guy that I think is interesting is Alex Verdugo.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I was going to ask you that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
you
he's
read
having
my
a good
mind.
year. He's got another year control after this. I mean, if you take a long-term point of view, then, maybe he's not going to be re-signed. I don't know. You know your team better than I do, but he's got the most trade value right now. He's the guy you could get some prospects for if you wanted to trade him because he's got a decent background. And he's not a superstar. He's a decent regular 2-ish WAR player, but that's got some value, especially with the control.
I mean, listen, I was going to ask you this. I didn't put him on here just because I'm still kind of like on the fence about him, but I love that you just brought it up. I mean, I'm even going to prove it because I even tweeted about it the other day. So, I mean, take a look here at my tweet because you got Trevor Story coming back here eventually. And I was really kind of diving into what are the Red Sox doing here, like with the roster, with eventually when Trevor Story comes back, because they're looking at him possibly being, maybe even a DH for a little bit before he comes back and plays some shortstop because he was throwing at shortstop the other day. He was looking okay. And but then I was speculating about Kike, and I kind of beat them to it. I don't know if the Red Sox are reading my tweet or whatever, but I'm thinking back to center field, second base, utility man off the bench. Well, look at that. He's back to the bench, utility man. Because I'm also wondering, how do you make room for Story? Duran is really coming into his own this year. He looks like just a way more confident guy out there. He just looks like he's kind of finally starting to grasp it at the major league level. Then I even thought, could you even trade Duran? This is he's gotten his value back up, younger guy. But to me, if I'm looking at either, I could see Duvall getting traded. That seems more obvious to me. But I said here, maybe trade Duran, maybe even Verdugo, because with Verdugo, if I'm hanging on to Verdugo or Duran, Verdugo to me seems like more of a candidate to me because Duran has way more control.
Yeah.
He's fat. He's a guy that could really, he's a game changer kind of a player. He has that potential. Verdugo, they're getting, like you mentioned, they haven't really, he's coming up on free agency in a couple of years or after next season. No extension has been reached. Corey was kind of calling him out coming into this year. And Verdugo has really stepped up this year. He kind of, really took to what Cora was saying. But when I looked at his trade value, I saw, decent value there, 22.2 million. And when I mentioned this earlier, and because I remembered you saying it last year, could you deal from a position of strength? The Red Sox have a good offense this year, but they're getting Story back, and that's going to be a bat that could essentially just fill in. It's obviously from the right side instead of the left. But to me, I feel like Verdugo could end up getting moved, and then the Red Sox, they deal from that position of strength, maybe look for some young pitching out there, and Verdugo is proven to be a good bat. So it kind of, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I wouldn't be surprised to see, MLB trade rumors say, teams have been calling about Verdugo.
Yeah, sure. I mean, he's got a 117 WRC plus. That's 17% above average. That's going to get some attention. And, because he's only got one more year control, it's not an outlandish price. Some teams can afford that. So a team that needs another bat has got to take a serious look at him.
Now, one other guy that I also was speculating about, because his name was coming up in the offseason. I don't think he's going to come up again. But again, wouldn't be surprised if I read MLB trade rumors say that teams have been making a phone call. Tristan Casas, this is a guy who still has quite a bit of value, mainly just because he's the young bat. That potential is there with him. I wonder, man, like, do you see him at all being a trade candidate?
I don't. I think because he's got so much control. He's still young. Yeah. He hasn't peaked yet. He's still kind of figuring it out. I mean, yes, he's limited defensively. He's basically a first baseman, maybe eventually DH. But, the bat is going to play eventually. I mean, there's still enough time to work through whatever issues he's got. I just feel like it'd be selling low if they didn't. It doesn't seem like Chaim Bloom's thing to give up on a guy early. And, he's got a lot of potential.
The only way I would even fathom seeing his name come up is if Bloom. But that's the thing. I don't think a team would blow you away for a deal for him because he's not having like this amazing year. The potential's there. I think 99.9% chance he stays, but just wouldn't be surprised because we saw the Marlins really looking into him in the offseason. And they could use a power bat. They got pitching over there. I don't know if they want to give up that pitching because they're having a good year. I don't know. I'm just like kind of speculating. At this point, I guess my point that I'm trying to make here is the Red Sox are in a weird spot. I think all possibilities are on the table, like with this Red Sox team. I think Bloom, we know how creative he gets. I guess that's kind of why I'm sort of like wondering if he could be someone. Probably not. I will get flamed in the comments for even bringing up Tristan Casas. I already know I'm setting myself up for failure. But listen, I'm a guy that's looking at all avenues, and that's what Bloom does.
He does, and sometimes he gets a little too like 4D chessy on himself. Like, I'm overthinking this, and I'm doing too much. It's weird. Just like keep it simple. Just play for the longer term.
But so out of all these three guys, I do think if the Red Sox are out of it, Paxton's going. I would say Duvall would probably go too.
And by the way, Duvall's number is going to go up because he was out for a while. He's only he's only had like 12 or 13 games. It's going to go. So it's a small sample size right now, but that's going to change if he keeps hitting.
Yeah, and like we said, we saw him go to the Braves. I think there will be a team that'd be intrigued with the power with him. It's not going to cost you a lot to get him for a rental. And Kike, I'll go Mike just because he's not having an amazing year, but the versatility with him is interesting. So
he's a depth guy at this point to another team.
Yeah. So I could see a team maybe taking a bite. Another guy that I think he's really emerged as a trade candidate this year, and kind of like the Royals signing with Chapman is Jeimer Candelario. He's really come around this year. He's having a really solid year on both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively. To me, I don't see why. And maybe the Nationals could work an extension with him. But to me, I feel like with where I think they're a couple of years away. I think it's probably, more likely they trade him. What do you think?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, I've always been a fan. I know he had a down year in 2022, but before that, he had some really good years in Detroit. And, so the Nationals got a steal here. He's got a decent amount of surplus value right now. He's on a 1-year deal. It's a no-brainer. He's not going the Nationals aren't going anywhere this year. So, and he's a hot bat. So a lot of teams could use him.
He's that happy medium where he's a rental and he's going to bring you back something pretty decent, or at least close to decent. So I agree. I think he's definitely a candidate. Oh man, I got to talk to you about this because you're an Oakland A's fan, right? Or
I am.
What's your story with the Oakland A's? I'm sorry. I know you're connected with the Oakland A's.
Well, I grew up out there, so I'm a fan.
Oh, that's right.
I have no business connections with them at all, but
yes.
Yeah, I used to write for the Athletics Nation site.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I couldn't remember. Well, I guess quick thoughts. Man, what do you think of that? The reverse boycott last night, man.
It was fun to see because all the fans came out, and I wish I could have been there because it was a great middle finger to the owner, John Fisher, and it was a really creative statement, basically saying, "Look, it's not our fault that you're leaving. It's we're here, we support the team, we love the team. We wanted a new stadium, but you wouldn't pay for it, and then you've got into a mess, and so like it's not our fault. We're still fans. So, but it's one of those things where like if you're just bottom line in business and you're just cutting costs, that's a death spiral. That's a race to the bottom. And that's what you're seeing with John Fisher doing. It's terrible with a sports team.
It's like it's sad. I do think Vegas is there's definitely marketing possibilities out there, that could be a great potential spot, but it's kind of sad to see, because Oakland has such a rich history. I would love it if they could just make a new ballpark there,
it's too much red tape. They tried and it just wasn't going anywhere. And, it really bugs me that, a billionaire is asking for money from, the local government. Why do you need money? Why can't you just build it yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really confusing situation because I guess Vegas hasn't really been I don't know, because all these twists and turns, they didn't approve it or something. And now I heard, or I read that they were okay. They were going to approve it. Or I don't even know what's
it's
going
in vote right now as we speak.
So what did you say? Sorry.
They're voting on it right now in the state legislature.
Oh, interesting.
So the news will be breaking any moment, actually.
Oh, man. Well, let's see if we'll be live. But Brent Rooker, he has emerged this year under a lot of control. He doesn't really have the track record, but he had a huge April, really cold in May, but he's had a decent month so far in June. I don't know what to think with Brent Rooker. What do you think?
So here's the thing. He has pedigree. He was a first-round draft choice, and he had a great swing. I remember there was a guy on Athletics Nation who was a hitting coach who said he's got the best swing of anybody in that particular year's draft. And it's oh, we should have drafted him. Now, years later, he comes back around on a waiver claim to the A's after bouncing around a bit, and he lights up. And here's the thing. He's got a hole in his swing down and in. And once pitchers figured that out, they started pitching him down and in. That's why he had a terrible May. And now I was watching the game last night, and he started to adjust. And so if he can adjust, then, that's a whole game, right? You adjust back after they figure out where your holes are. That's the big question with him. But there's enough there that you think, okay, his numbers are still decent for the year. He's 29 years old, so he's not the kind of guy you're going to build around for the A's. I know he's got some control, but he's also out of options. They did this with Christian Bethancourt last year, traded with the Rays, another sort of late bloomer who put up some decent numbers, and they just shipped him off for 2 minor prospects. So I feel like that's probably what they're going to do again with Rooker.
Yeah, it's sorry, I just saw in the chat that Bob Nightingale just said that the Nevada State Assembly passed the bill for the A's to relocate. So governor approval is now needed. So.
But he's a supporter, so he's going to sign that. So, yeah.
Yeah. So,
okay.
Well, there goes that. But that's a different conversation for a different time. But Brent Rooker, I think, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the A's deal him. It's they've already had just this miserable year. And wouldn't it just make sense to just deal your best player, So,
well, yeah, I mean, they don't have much left to trade. So he's a candidate. Laureano has been cool. He's starting to perk up a little bit, so he may be another candidate. And they've got a lefty reliever named Sam Maul, who's at least decent against lefty hitters. So he's probably got a little bit of value on our site. So that's about it. Now, the A's just don't have much to trade. So, and their farm's not great. So if they get a good offer for Rooker or any of these other guys, I think they'll take it.
Yeah. So where would you go? Would you put definitely or maybe more might?
In between definitely and might. I guess I'd go might.
Yeah.
The one thing that's holding me back is that if he makes this last adjustment, his value could go up more. So you might want to give him the opportunity to build that value more if he's figured out his pot of gold here.
I mean, the A's really could use, I know, we're talking about the A's moving and whatnot, but they still have an organization to run and they really could use prospects, and if he really got himself, going, and like you said, really, kept nailing down that adjustment, man, who knows, maybe he gets up to around 20 million in value and ends up, like a team like the Mets who maybe could use another bat or, the Marlins, just something. So, but yeah, moving on to a couple of Rockies guys. We're getting towards the end here. I would probably go definitely getting traded with these guys. I'm going to run through that pretty quick. Grichuk has had a decent year. I could see him being some depth. And then Profar is always kind of this weird enigma sort of on base guy where I could see a team maybe being intrigued. I would go here for these two. Where would you go?
It's the Rockies, man. Who knows what the heck they're doing? They don't know what they're doing.
That is a good. That's a good.
Last year we said the same thing. They didn't trade Daniel Bard. they defy logic, right? So you would think Profar is going to go because he's on a 1-year deal, but he's not really outperforming his contract. His contract's not that big, but he's not that big a player. So it's like, maybe he's probably a depth guy and a contender. Grichuk, he's got a spotty track record too. But the good news is Toronto actually covered most of his salary when they traded him last year. So he's not making much in salary. So that's a plus for any team that's going to acquire him. And he's got a little bit of a hot hand right now. So you're basically getting 2 months of a guy who's like, he's not a superstar or anything, but he'll help a little bit. So you give him a little bit, so, that's about it. So neither one of these guys is going to bring home anybody decent, but,
even pulling up their values, it's like nothing. That's what I'm saying. Maybe Grichuk could be like a depth piece, like a backup outfielder, Profar. He's a guy that can come off your bench, but nothing too notable with them. Let's get to our final 3 guys. We've made it to the end here. These are, I would say, I know we've gone through a lot of big names, but these would probably be the big 3 names. Shane Bieber, it's really interesting because the Guardians are in second place, but they're 4 under 500. The Guardians, we know, are always trying to look ahead. He's getting closer to free agency, a couple of years away. Where do you stand on the Shane Bieber?
They have a pattern of trading. They've got a pipeline. They got a pitching factory, right? So it's like next man up. So once the guy gets close to free agency, they have a pattern of trading that guy, whether it was Carrasco or Clevenger or Kluber. That's their pattern. Right?
Clevenger is probably the most, I would say, the most comparable one because he had that same amount of control. So
exactly. Now the discouraging thing with Bieber is that he's not having a great year. Like his underlying numbers are not great. And so there's a bit of a falling knife situation here. Like, we know he can pitch. He's never been a high velocity guy. He's always been kind of a pitchability guy, but he's losing a little bit of velocity. So that makes that margin of error even trickier. So, his value has been falling. Each time we crunch the numbers, it gets lower and lower and lower. So by the time the deadline comes around, he might, I think we have him in the 30s now, but it may be in the 20s. So I can see a team taking a chance on him. But there's that thought in the back of your mind, like he's in decline. And so that extra year of control with a higher salary may not be worth all that much. So I've just got a funny feeling he's not going to be that hot a commodity the way things are trending. But countering that is the fact that so many teams need decent starting pitching. So where else are you going to go? So
one team that for me really could make a lot of sense, a team that could use pitching that has, because one thing about Bieber as well is he gets a healthy amount of ground balls, right around 46%. And a team that has a good infield defense are the Texas Rangers. And you just lost to Grom. One thing about Bieber, and then you'd have him for next year, where he's essentially taking DeGrom's place in the rotation for next year. And then you would eventually get DeGrom back. And then you would have if Eovaldi is healthy next year, you got yourself a pretty decent 1-2-3 of Eovaldi, DeGrom, and Bieber, and you got the depth guys. And the Rangers, I feel like, have the prospect depth to maybe get a deal done. They don't have to commit to him for a long time. I feel like it could make a lot of sense. Like, what do you think?
Yeah. So the Rangers farm doesn't have maybe Evan Carter is your star. But look, Cleveland, as much as they have pitching, they've had terrible bats, right? Outfield has been a problem for years, right? So you think if they're going to trade Bieber, what they're going to want to get back is a really strong bat, like a really, impact bat. Yeah. And I'm not sure if the Rangers have that in their farm. Mm-hmm. You might want to look at the Rays because they've always got guys, right?
Curtis, that's another team too.
Caminero and this guy and that guy. So and they could just at the drop of a hat say, okay, I'll give you that guy, and it still wouldn't make much of a dent. So, I can think I funny feeling the Rays were a better candidate because they've got those impact guys in their farm.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
the Rays are dangerous. And then I've seen a lot of connections with the Orioles as well. Yeah. If they wanted a major league ready bat, you've got a couple of guys there. I'd be wondering if the Orioles would want to part with an Austin Hayes or a Santander. I don't know. I don't know if that really.
I don't think so, because they're in it, right? They're having a great year, and those guys are helping, right? So
yeah. So,
and they've got this ridiculously good farm, so they're going to trade from their farm if anything, and maybe
and then,
not, the top guys, but like the second tier of guys. They got plenty of guys to throw around there.
Yeah, I think Bieber is going to be really interesting. It's just really hard because they're 3 out in this division. Then again, I guess with the Guardians, though, I don't think that matters too much, just because I think I could see the Guardians thinking like, you know what, we could deal Bieber, but we could still win this division. Like we could retool and get it, we could, and he has enough value that could bring in both major league ready guys as well as prospects. So like I could see the Guardians being, and when we've seen the reports that some major league executives thinks that he is gone, despite them being in that, so I would probably go more Mike.
I'm with you on that, because the main thing that steers me there is their pattern has been very consistent. They think long term. They don't want to, they want to get some value while they can from those pitchers, because they know they got more pitchers coming. Yeah, so they can afford to do it. That's the thing.
Well, one guy that's very similar is Corbin Burns. In my mind, I actually kind of. I basically just even got rid of the idea that Corbin Burns is a trade candidate, but then I also just think the Brewers are very similar with the Guardians and the way they think. They traded Josh Hader last year, and they ended up, moving Devin Williams into that closer spot. But the Brewers, it's a weird team this year. I'm not very high on this Brewers team. They don't rank very well, especially when it comes to advanced numbers like Sierra with pitching and like Woba, like they just WRC plus, they don't rank really well. They're a good defensive team, but they just don't really do a whole lot to me. They don't do a lot for me. And one guy that they have is Corbin Burns, who's been one of the better pitchers in the game. He's not having as crisp of a year that he's usually had, but it's still Corbin Burns, and he could get you some pretty decent pieces. I personally feel like he would be lower than Bieber, but what do you think?
Well, I don't think they're going to move him, because they're in first place or right there, and nobody wants to win that NL Central, so somebody's got to win it, right? I mean, even though they don't look great on paper, the other teams look worse. So unless the Pirates are real, and I'm not sure the Pirates are real yet, it feels like next year they'll be more real than they are this year. It feels a little bit too premature, but I could be wrong. So I think if you're the Brewers, you're like, wow, we're in this. Why? And they kind of regretted trading Hader last year, kind of had that negative effect on their clubhouse. And so by trading Burns, they'd definitely be waving the white flag, and the rest of the team would be like, why are you trading our best pitcher when we're in first place? I don't think they're going to do that. So, and there's always the off season to kind of make those moves, because he's got another year of control. Woodruff is another one in that. He's been injured all year, obviously, but if they get him back, things might change. Maybe they're hoping to get him back and they can make a run, because they can't do it all with just Burns, right? So, I'm waffling here because it's not clear, but I don't think they're going to trade Burns, because I don't think the circumstances are right.
I'm in the same boat. Like he's a very similar pitcher to Bieber, like when it comes to control. I'm not talking about the pitching wise, but more like their situation, their amount of control left. The values are really similar, both on teams with like similar outlooks on everything. Yeah. But I'm with you. It feels like Bieber is there's more of a chance of him getting moved than Burns,
Yeah, because he's more replaceable in their system.
Yeah, I would go staying put with you. I think I would probably maybe even go like in this middle range. Like
I'm leaning staying put though.
But I'll go staying put. Last but not least, we have finally reached the end here. And how could we not talk about Shohei Ohtani? I mean, we have to.
You saved it for the end.
Can they just move him? Like, I mean, come on. The Angels aren't going to do anything. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm talking. This is radio talk right now. But the Angels do have that possibility where if they could get in, maybe they could make something happen. They are a game out, and they haven't played well lately. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They've won 3 straight. I really wanted the Angels to just be bad this year, just because I just wanted Ohtani to get moved. But but they're playing well, and I wonder, I was talking with I don't know if you know the channel Giraffe Neck Mark.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with him, and I actually said, hey, where do you think Ohtani's going to go? He's like, I think he's going to stay with the Angels. I'm like, you know what? With how they're playing lately, I'm like, I wouldn't. Yeah, like I don't want that to happen because it's boring. It's like the Aaron Judge thing. We all want to see Ohtani go somewhere, but if they keep this up, I think there is a chance that they could sweet talk him, and then they'll be like, yeah, hey, come on, we had a better year this year. We're getting there, So there's a lot of there's a lot of circumstances here. I think I know where you stand with Ohtani, but I'll let you have the floor. Like, what are you thinking?
Well, they've got a 40% chance of making the playoffs, according to FanGraphs, and they're in it. They're 7 games over 500. So, and they've been frustrated that they haven't been a playoff team for so long in there. So I'm sure they're thinking, wow, we're finally in it. Yes, this is the year. Mike Trout, hey, we're going to the playoffs. Let's stick it out. So the last thing we would want to do is move Ohtani and break that up. Because if he did that, he'd kill the team morale. And Trout would be like, what the hell are you doing? So, so right now, that's the way it's looking to me. Things could change, obviously, in the next month or so. Because if they start to fall out of it, if they get into a slump or whatever, then I'm more inclined to say he's gone, because you got to, at that point, if you're out of it, you got to trade him, because I know they might think, oh, we've got a better chance of signing him. But look, you just spent 6 years in Anaheim and they haven't won anything. And if they don't, if they don't contend, he's not going to re-sign with them. So you have to trade him at that point. So it's going to be a really interesting month. Will they, won't they month,
Yeah, the one thing I think about with Ohtani too, he is an expensive rental. Like, wow. Like, because when you see that $50 million value, you're thinking, oh, he's got another year of control. Nope, because
he's 2 players in one.
So that's a lot of money for a few months.
I mean, that's going to go down a bit as we get closer to the deadline.
Sure,
it's going to go down to 40-ish, maybe high 30s or whatever. But that's still a lot for a rental. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've seen like maybe even just that way of thinking. Maybe teams don't want to even get close to that value. Like we saw with Soto. I think the deal was approved. I think wasn't it like a moderate overpay last year for Soto?
Technically, it was a minor overpay because the numbers were so big from a percentage basis. It wasn't that far off. But yeah,
I could see like maybe teams maybe going on the lower end, of his surplus. Where you're looking at maybe around 40.
Yeah,
I could see it maybe being that.
But again, the Rays could spit that out like nothing.
Oh
right?
my goodness! I swear we're on the same wavelength. I said this. I said, man, I don't remember what stream I said it, but if you're the Rays, I'm not even thinking of just like a number wise, stat wise, whatever. I'm thinking of the Rays. They want a new stadium. They want to get fans in the seats. They want to bring attention. Man, if there's one team that could really do it and just kind of just go crazy, and be like, because to me, I think their motivation is there's always the motivation to win a World Series, but I feel like with the Rays, they have it this year.
Yeah.
They have something.
Yeah.
And if there's one team that could kind of splurge a little bit where they got, you got a bit, someone that's got a whole lot of money in his pocket, like, yeah, I'll spend this, whatever. Like an Elon Musk just buying Twitter just because. It's the Rays, because they got that talent in the farm. And man, and I'm saying, like, just if you want to go win a World Series, like go get this guy. Like, they could use another pitcher. Why not have this bat? Like it. Oh man, I'm so glad you said the Rays, just because I've been thinking the same exact thing, just because in terms of just motivation to win a World Series. Now they won't be able to keep them long term.
No,
but that's where I kind of hold back a little bit, because I do wonder if they would make that deal, they would pull the trigger. But this is a probably they're going to have a lot of chances to win the World Series, but you have a really good chance this year to win it. And man, like, to me, it's like, this is like the piece that gets you there. And
totally. Yeah. I mean, we got a bunch of Rays fans on our site who are always talking about things, and they're like saying, yeah, we're not the type of team that trades for Ohtani because he's making $30 million this year. But, if you break that down by the deadline, he's only be able to $10 million. It's the Rays, but go for it. Like, $10 million is not that bad in the grand scheme of things for them. So, and plus the trade capital, they've got so much. Like, you trade Junior Candelario, you wouldn't make a dent in their farm. It's fine.
Yeah, and like, I agree. It's just like gosh, just like it goes against everything they've always done. You know, they have brought in guys like Nelson Cruz, but he's a more affordable option in the past. And but then I think but the one thing I always think about is that they kind of shocked everyone by getting in on the Freddie Freeman sweepstakes. And ever since then, I'm kind of just waiting for the Rays to just do something, like just to kind of get crazy. You know,
you remember when they signed Charlie Morton out of the blue? Like, oh, let's give him $15 million or whatever.
Yeah, like that too.
Like, no, once in a while they'll do that, right?
Yeah, like I think to me, like a team. I think the Rays, honestly, like they kind of in my head make the most sense, even though that kind of doesn't make sense at the same time. But a team that really, and it's kind of an obvious one, are the Mets, just because. Now, I'm not talking from like what they have available. I'm more talking about from like a need point of view, where they need a bat. They've had injuries to the pitching, and man, like he would be perfect for them. Like a team that like really needs him. The Mets need him the most. I just don't know if they have the if they want to just give up prospects at this point, because they're trying to rebuild that farm or build it up more.
That's going to be the tough choice for them. Yeah.
The Dodgers are interesting, but I feel like with the Dodgers, I feel like they're kind of just like, you know what? We're just going to give it our best shot this year, and we'll go after him in the offseason. So,
yeah, I think they're definitely going off in the offseason. So whoever trades for him now is probably not going to – don't assume that they're going to re-sign him, because he's going to have a big market.
That's what I don't think – I think if he gets traded, it's not going to be a Mookie Betts situation where he ends up signing long-term. I think – if he goes to the Mets, he's playing for a couple months there, and then he's going to be a free agent. Yeah. So
it's like Machado a couple of years ago when he spent 2 months with the Dodgers, and then he took the highest bid, right? So,
I thought about this, and I'll just get this thought before we kind of close up shop here. How hilarious would it be if he ends up getting traded, goes to the whatever? Let's just say he goes to the Mets, Rays, whatever, and he just ends up going back to the Angels. That would be the most hilarious thing ever. Like,
I really doubt that that's going to happen.
That wouldn't happen.
I think he's done with the Angels.
Yeah,
I think he was a little naive when he signed with them, and he was like, "Okay, I'll try this team." Now he's a lot smarter now.
Well, on that note, let's wrap this up here. We went a little over time, but we had it's a busy trade season coming up, and we got to get everyone in tune with it. We got to get everyone ready for it. And I know there's candidates here that we definitely didn't mention. We could be here for another 3 hours talking about more candidates.
Another show.
We had a lot to talk about, because there are kind of like those obvious candidates, and there are those candidates that, definitely good maybes. And even the ones that we put are not likely to go anywhere. Who knows? Maybe something could come up. But I guess closing, what are you thinking here? Closing thoughts for the upcoming trade market.
As I say every year, don't be surprised if there's a surprise. Right now it's not looking that great. Like let's call it the Lucas Giolito trade season. It's not that sexy, but something's going to surprise us, right? Somebody's like, okay, we'll move that guy. Like, what? You're moving that guy? So I expect that every year.
Well, I just hope Ohtani gets moved, because I need the buzz. I need the excitement. It's been great the last few seasons. So we need it. I'm hoping for it. I'm praying that we can get a blockbuster. We all love the blockbusters. But everyone, if you can, on your way out, hit that like button, subscribe if you are new. And remember, if you want to go get your team drafted on Sorare, click the link in the description down below. John, I want to thank you for coming back to the channel and talking trades. I'm sure we're going to have a couple more of these as we get closer to the trade deadline, and I'm excited. So
awesome.
Cool beans. All right, everyone. Have a great night. Thank you for joining, and we'll talk to you next time.